Hey everyone, Doug here from 2 Plus Tough, and in this video we're going to take a look at the release of Forbidden Power.
Okay.
I do want to upfront thank GW for sending me an advanced copy of this. There's a lot of really cool things in here, and I want to start this discussion off with what this video is really going to be about. You see, there are a ton of YouTubers who are active right now that will receive an advanced copy of something and basically just read it straight from the book, like covering a battle tome. They'll skip the lore, skip the art, and then just kind of read off the rules. And while that content is awesome for a lot of people, it doesn't really jive with this kind of release. It's not like a battle tome where you can just read it off. So what I want to do in this video, show you the contents of the box, how it arrives to you, and then we're going to go through the book, talk about some of the rules for sure, but the real emphasis I want to have is towards the end about the nature of the value of this box. I will say as a spoiler, I think this is a cool set. There's a lot of cool things going for it. I will say that it's not for everyone, and so staying tuned to figure out, is this the right set for you, I think is a great way to kind of determine how to spend your hobby funds. That being said, let's go take a look at the contents of the box. Alright, so once you remove it from the packaging, this is basically a slip-in thing inside that box I held up. I did just double check to make sure everything was there before beginning, but I just wanted to show off. I'll put this to the corner. You got your bases, which are awesome. I like when they put them in a little Ziploc bag. I don't know why. It's the little things that mean a lot to me. Here we have on one sprue the what's his name? The boatman. The boatman, the farrier of souls on one. Over here we have I'll put it over here so we can see a little better, the horror gas, which is these two parts, which is Nagash's head screaming at everyone. And I was surprised to learn that the pairs of the pyramids, I thought they were going to be like 4 or 5 parts. No, they're just straight up one piece each. So obviously the endless spell is these 2 parts, but yeah, it's all there. I thought it was going to be kind of like the Skaven endless spell where it has like the 3 nodes or like that, where those are just more pieces than they need to be. Anyway. Then there is the 2 parts to the bridge. Each one of these forms one end of it. And then there is the Penumbral engine, I think it's called. We'll get to the names here as we review the War Scrolls. What's interesting to me is that all these pieces, unlike malign sorcery, are built in a way that they could be sold separately. Here you have your bridge, here's the forge. The only ones that are honest brew together are the Horrorghast and the little pyramid things. But that's kind of an interesting change. And I don't know if they're going to be sold separately in the future or what. I have no idea. Here we have our Forbidden Power book and our instruction manual. I'll put that off to the side, as well as this super cool piece of art, which is definitely getting framed. On the other side, it's just the logo on the front of the box. I love that they include these. I have actually... what do I have? Speed Freaks and the Carrion Empire ones on my wall. I absolutely love it. But this side's getting framed for sure. And I opened these to make sure that they were all there. These are your War Scroll cards. Now, one thing that's interesting is you obviously get your War Scroll cards for the endless spells, but the reason I opened it is because I have a whole bunch of them here. Well, they actually give you War Scroll cards. Oh, my camera focus here. For the new terrain kits that are coming out. So if you don't know, they're coming out as well with Sigmarite, like ruin type things. And if you build them as the instruction details, they have effects. So this one is the Enduring Storm Vault, which is the mega one, I believe, and it has its scenery rules. Now, they've already told us that the scenery is pretty modular, so you don't have to build these things, but if you do, they have rules, which it's interesting because nothing else in this box really alludes to that scenery except these cards. So, there's that. I'm not quite sure what to make of that, but it's cool that we have War Scroll card versions of that. Like I said, we'll cover the spells here in a little bit. And then a whole heckin' ton of tokens. Now, we'll come back to the tokens. I'm just going to lay it on the table here. Basically, there is a sort of campaign system in Forbidden Power. We're going to chat about that towards the end of the video. These are tokens to represent some of those things. There are also just really, really simple stuff like objective markers. There's some artifacts that are specific to Forbidden Power. You have reminders of what those do and that kind of stuff. Gravesite markers for the death side. Well, this makes more sense as we explore the actual campaign stuff. So let's dive into forbidden power itself. So the book itself is 88 pages. What I can tell you is about 21 of those are rules. The vast majority of it is lore. And now, I'm not going to cover the lore in depth in this video because I want to make lore videos about it. That's just the general basis of this channel, if you haven't figured that out. But what the lore is it basically catches people up on Soul Wars, if you skipped that. You know, if you didn't get that box set and have that little bit of updated stuff, and introduces this idea that during the Age of Myth, as Sigmar was conquering the realms, he was collecting all these super powerful weapons, like we would call them weapons of mass destruction, massive implications of these weapons, and he chose, instead of destroying them, to hoard them, and he sealed them away in these vaults. The way he did that was that when the Pantheon was still a thing and elves were still, like the elven gods were still on the side of order, well, they're still on order, but they were like friendly with Sigmar. Teclis, who is the Lord of Illumination, elf god and twin brother of Tyrion, ruler of Hysh. Teclis made these machines that basically, if you were around them, you get intelligent, you get illumination. Things become easy to understand. And the idea was, if everyone's smarter and learns faster, then civilization can accelerate. That's how they made things boom with population and technology in the Age of Myth. Really cool stuff. Sigmar, to hide these vaults and these weapons, inverted them so that people forget things, and he like made them kind of mysterious. So you put it in a vault, all of a sudden everyone who helped build that vault being near that engine forgets what they were doing, and so they don't remember where the vault is, and it makes them really hard to find. When the Necroquake went off, it basically disrupted all of those Penumbral engines, the terrain piece we get, which is what it is. They don't function like they're supposed to, and people have been able to find storm vaults full of incredible artifacts of power. So this brings you up to speed with that, and then proceeds to go into a rather lengthy narrative about one of the biggest storm vaults is under the city of, I think it's called Lethis. Yes, Lethis, the Raven City. And it kind of gives you a really in-depth narrative to the forces of death converging on this city to get to the storm vault underneath it. And there's stuff like both sides hire out mercenaries. They got the gray-feared fire slayers in there helping them out. And we'll chat about that in a second. But I think overall, it's a really cool story. It's kind of everything I wanted from Carrion Empire. I was actually, when I got Carrion Empire, I was going to do a lore video about that story arc, like why the Skaven are fighting Flesh Eater Courts, but it was so uninteresting. And so, like, I just didn't like it. There was nothing to it, no depth. I just kind of brushed it off, to be honest with you. But this, like, there is really cool information here. And kind of like how we had to learn what realm gates were, and then we had the whole realm gate wars of like fighting over these strategically valuable locations. This kind of sets up the same stage for fighting over storm vaults. And the reason I think storm vaults are cooler is because there's stuff in them, right? Realm gates are important locations, but storm vaults can contain anything, and that's kind of a cool, mysterious thing. There was a rumor that in this storm vault that they're fighting over resided an evil presence that Sigmar could not destroy. Like there's an actual person in there. And I won't reveal any details about that. But yeah, so here's a really sweet piece of art. We have Lady Allender versus the Celestin Prime. And if you don't know, the Celestin Prime shows up in the like colors and regalia of whatever storm host he's near. And so he shows up as an Anvils of Held and Hammer. And they have a pretty epic clash. It's cool stuff. And so we got Sigmar there. And then it jumps into, like I said, this coming week, I'm going to be working on notes for a full lore review of all the implications here. We see more talking from Teclis and Tyrion than we've ever seen before. Really cool stuff I want to dive into. But I got this today, the day before this video goes out, so I didn't have time to do full lore videos on that. But I want to jump into more of the crunchy stuff, because we're going to discuss the value of it. The fact that almost 2/3 of this book is story should kind of set the tone. If you value those things, keep that in mind. If you don't value story and you just want rules and competitive stuff, that is going to affect your idea of value. So let's kind of move in with that in mind. It gives you some super stellar artwork, of course, showing off the brand spanking new terrain. We got some, what is that, Sylvanath, and some undead. This is a necromancer there, and it goes through a full painting tutorial. Some of these are actually really good, like, what was it, what was the one that I liked? Oh yeah, the marble. Because I've never been able to do marble well. Anyway, so that kind of stuff's really nice. And it kind of breaks down, within this story, it explains that there are a multitude of races trying to defend this city. And we'll get to what those are in a second, but you can obviously see from the picture, you have Stormcast Eternals, Keragen Overlords, Fire Slayers, and Idoneth Deepkin. Let's see. And then for the undead hosts, we'll get to those in a second because I don't want to miss him, because frankly I forget all the little sub-factions in Legions of Nagash. You are also, when we get into the rules now, you're introduced to a few things. This kind of gives you, this is kind of like the what's in the book, you know, it just kind of explains what each of these sections are. We'll skip that because I'll explain them to you. We get a new realm of battle. So instead of fighting in a realm, you can fight in Stygics, which is kind of like the city and pocket realm in this particular corner of Shyish. It's been talked about before, I believe, in Nagash Undying King, and it is a pretty large place. To kind of go, I'm just going to read through here real quick. Like I said, this isn't about reading the book necessarily. I want to focus more on the discussion afterwards. But you get a unique spell like all the other ones. Pall of Doom has a casting value of 6. If cast, pick an enemy unit within 18 inches of the caster that is visible to them. Subtract 2 from the bravery characteristic. Dang, that's good. There's actually a lot of things in this book that affect bravery. So if you can, even if you are not a faction that has a ton of bravery manipulators, you can make a bravery bomb with this stuff. It's going to be a huge deal. Let's see here. They have a unit command ability. They actually have 2 command abilities you can use. What's interesting about this book is Realm Sphere Prayer. So there are a lot of prayers in this book. They want you to focus on priest. There are, spoiler alert, when you go to build your army, a few ways to make your heroes priests, even if they're not. So if you are a faction that doesn't have those by nature, you can gain the priest keyword and be able to interact with this stuff. So Realmscape stuff, really, really cool. And then it basically gives you 2 sets of armies. So we have the Lethis is the name of the city, so it's Lethisian army, and the attackers, which is undead, and that is the Legion of Grief. So I'll run through these really quickly and just kind of point out things that stand out. First of all, I want to focus on what the armies are composed of. Okay, so this one is Stormcast Eternal, Idoneth Deepkin, Keragen Overlords, Fire Slayers, or Excelsior War Priests, which is a very specific word, keyword, I mean. So it's just that one dude with the little griff hand, I believe. So very cool stuff. It says, but it cannot include any units with the following keywords: Hammers of Sigmar, Vostarg, and Volturnus. So what that means is you have access to all the things in those factions, but all the heroes in the Stormcast Eternal book, much to my chagrin, are Hammers of Sigmar. The named character from, the leader from Warhammer Underworlds for, not Fire Slayers. I don't know, I'm having a brain fart here. Fire Slayers is from Volstarg, and Volturnus is the name of the named character for Deepkin. So it's basically saying, pick whatever you want from those factions, no named characters, is functionally how that plays out. It's keyworded, but that is in practice how it plans out. And if you do that, you get a whole bunch of cool stuff. Basically, in the Battle Shock phase, you can reroll Battle Shock tests for friendly Lysian Defender units. In addition, add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by human Lethisian Defender and Duarden Lethisian Defender units that target enemy units that made a charge move that turn. So, that is pretty stinking cool. That target enemy units that made a charge move. So, yeah, they're taking the brunt. So if you get charged, you get +1 to hit. And that's kind of a cool thing. Stormcasts in particular have the human keyword, so it'd be all your Stormcast and all your Fire Slayers and KO from this. Though if your KO get charged, you don't. The +1 to hit's not gonna change everything. And then with that is the Achillean Phalanx. Add 1 to the move characteristic of Achillean Lithian, I hate that word, Lithian defender units. In addition, add 1 to charge rolls for those same things. So Achillean, it's only going to affect your fast movers, your Eel Riders, I believe, the Achillean King, obviously, that kind of stuff. So there's nothing here to buff Thralls, which is kind of a bummer, because Thralls were actually pictured in that group photo of all the different factions, but they don't get any particular bonuses. And you get a command ability. It says you can use this command ability at the start of your combat phase. If you do so, pick a friendly, we'll say Defender Liberators unit, wholly within 12 inches of a Stormcast Eternal hero. Until the end of that phase, add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target the Liberators. However, that Liberator unit cannot make pile-in moves that phase. I don't know why it's so specific that it affects Liberators. That kind of boggles my mind, but it's there. Okay. Could have just said Stormcast Eternals and it wouldn't have changed things, really. And as far as command traits go, I'm not going to go into every detail about every single one of these things. Again, I want to focus on the value of the set. You can feel free to go get that, read it online. I'm sure 10,000 other YouTubers will just read it to you. Ones that are important to me, Raven Priest. No matter what kind of army you have based on these criteria, you can get the priest keyword. So you can have a Kharadron Overlord priest, chemist, which is, it's a cool thing because if you look right here, you have prayers. There are some pretty cool ones. What I would say is just, I think it's unique how easily they hand out the priest keyword. I like that quite a bit. A lot of stuff here about bravery. Both of those are cool. As far as the prayers, none of them really stood out to me as being incredible. There's a lot of rerolls for this kind of thing. Reroll save rolls of 1 for attacks that target, that kind of stuff. Subtract 1 from hit rolls for an enemy. And, all this kind of stuff that just they're not overpowering effects by any means, but they are interesting, especially when you consider the kind of units you can bring. So for me, example, I painted a whole lot of Stormcast. I also have my Kharadron Overlords collecting dust on the shelf. I could easily merge those into a fun army. The problem is I don't have any Liberators for that command ability. It's going to be a bit wasted. So it is what it is. Next, we'll move on to the Death factions. And these have some very specific criteria. So the Legion of Grief, as it's called, is composed of, Dead Walkers, Death Lords, Death Mages, Death Rattle, or Night Haunt. Zombies, Morghast Archai, whatever. Death Mages, so Necromancer, and the Mortis Engine. Death Rattle's all your skeletons, and Night Haunt is all your ghosties. So you have quite all the infantry type stuff is all there. Notably missing is Soul Blight, which is a bummer. If it includes any Mortarks, then it must also include Lady Ollander, and she must be your general. So my understanding from that reading is that if it includes any Mortarks, then it must also include Lady O. So you could take Neferata, but to do that, you would also have to take Lady O, and Lady O would have to be your general. I don't see anything in the wording that makes it seem like you can only take Lady O, but yeah. And then, honestly, for their battle traits, I'm not going to go into it too much because it's stuff you've seen before. It's Legions of Nagash. You get 2 grave sites. I believe in Legions of Nagash you get 3 or 4. I haven't read the book in a long time, I'm so sorry. But you get 2 grave sites, Deathless Minion save, subtract 1 for the bravery of any units that are within 6 inches of a Legions of Grief, which is pretty similar to the Night Hunt thing. And you can bring stuff back at the gravesite, summonable units. It works pretty much the same. It's very, very similar. Noticeably absent is the fact that they don't have a prayer list like the other guys do. They have a spell lore. A lot of bravery debuffs. Here's a Shroud of Terror is a minus D3 to bravery. I just think that stuff is really the emphasis here. They have I think a wider pool of models sometimes to pull from. Just all these little sub-factions are huge. But yeah. And then we move into Mercenaries. So Mercenaries was talked about a lot when GW had kind of hinted at it at one reveal event. And there's a lot of thoughts about what that's going to mean. Basically, my assumption based on this is they're going to pick out a few factions, a few keywords, and say these can actually work cross Grand Alliance. I think the wording is going to be very, if not copy-paste, to what we have here and how they work. And really what it is here's a list of models that can be mercenaries. In this narrative context, all they have is the Greyfeared Lodge from Fireslayers, and it has to be the Greyfeared Lodge, and the Tenebrous Court mercenaries, which is Flesh Eater Courts. Okay. And basically, it works similar to allies. One in every 4 models that you build your army with can either be an ally or a mercenary. If a mercenary unit uses an ability or a spell that adds a unit to your army, that the unit that is added also has the mercenary keyword, and it doesn't count towards that total. So if you bring a Flesh Eater Court, whatever the hero is, and he summons the Man-at-Arms thing and brings more models, it doesn't matter. They gain the mercenary keyword. They can't be affected by command abilities, nothing like that at all. And they are not included when working out your battle line units, but they do count towards your maximum of leader, behemoth, and artillery, stuff that we would assume from various allies. One thing that is interesting is pitched battles. In pitched battles, the points you have available to spend on allied units, see the Warhammer Age of Sigmar core book, can be spent on mercenary units, although any points spent on mercenary units are deducted from the total you have available to spend on allied units and vice versa. So really what they're saying is they're just making a distinction between allies and mercenaries. Mercenaries are allies, but there are just a few other restrictions based around them in terms of the units that you can take. But what you're really getting for that is units that your Grand Alliance wouldn't have access to. The big drawback here is mercenary special rules, disruptive presence. If your army includes any mercenary units, remember they all get the keyword, at the start of your hero phase in the first battle round, you do not receive 1 command point. So that's your payment. You obviously are paying the points for them. Some of these are very expensive, especially the Fireslayer ones now. And you don't get a command point your first round. That is interesting to me, isn't it? What a opportunity cost. Some factions don't care at all. Other factions care immensely. And it does say, for example, to give you restriction ideas, with the Greyfeared Lodge, Auric Runefathers cannot be included in part of mercenary units. Why? Because thematically he wouldn't go out them, he would send a detachment. And the Runefather would go fight somewhere else. And they also each have their own little pseudo-allegiance ability. Add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by Fireslayer mercenary units that target an enemy units that made a charge move in the same turn. So anyway, however, from the start of the 3rd battle round, subtract 1 from the bravery characteristic of friendly Fireslayer mercenary units while they are not wholly within 18 inches of your general. Meaning, if they're not around the guy who's paying them to fight, they start to not care and start running away. That is super cool. I like that thematically. So you want to keep your mercs close so that the leader is constantly reminding them, get to work, and all that stuff. And then thematically for the Flesh Eater Courts, no Terrorgeists or Zombie Dragons. Interestingly, you can have they're not keyworded here, and so that means you can have the arch or the regent or whatever the hero is on a dragon, the hero on a Terrorgeist. It's just the Royal Terrorgeist is the Terrorgeist by itself. And their kind of drawback. So it's add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by Flesh Eater Court mercenary units that made a charge move in the same turn. However, they cannot make retreat moves ever. So that's kind of a cool thing. If you use them as a meat shield and just rush forward with no intention of backing off, they'll do real good. So that's, the mercenaries thing. So it does have a built-in for pitch battles. That's awesome. I do hope that when they come out with the General's Handbook, they do have this sort of pro and drastic con for every one of these things. It specifically says they can work for any Grand Alliance, and that is super cool. I like it quite a bit. Let's see. They are not included when working out your army's allegiance and can therefore be part of a different Grand Alliance or faction from the rest of your army. So yeah, and it can't be the army's general or benefit from allegiance abilities, and cannot be a named character, just in case they miss something with the keywords. So that's all really cool stuff. I really dig it. We'll come back to the Penumbral engine here in a second. Oh, and actually gives us rules on that. So an army of any allegiance can include one Penumbral engine terrain feature. In pitched battle, you have available points to spend on allied units. Can be spent on Penumbral engines, although any points spent on the engine are deducted from the total you have. So basically, what it's saying is, if you are a faction that doesn't have terrain, or if you do have terrain and you just want more, you can spend 100 of your ally points to get this guy. The points, right? He's 100. Yep, Penumbral engine, 100 points, scenery. So it's interesting that scenery is now costing points, but it is cool for all those factions who just don't have anything yet. So it is what it is. I like that everything here has a pitched battle format associated with it, and it's just a really nice thing to add for them. So now we're going to talk about the campaign. Without going, I'm not going to read this entire thing to you. What it really is, you and your 4 best friends, right? I think it's like up to 4 players, I believe. Yeah, so the ideal kind of grand mission at the end there is 4 players, everyone takes a corner. It gives you 4 pitched battle formats, very like symmetrical battle plans, and gives you 4 very narrative asymmetrical battle plans. And you and your opponent roll off, and you decide which one you want to do. Pitch battle stuff where it's equal, or more narrative things. And then you roll off, and you determine what kind of mission you play. You and your 3 best friends, you're going to play a bunch of games. Whoever wins 6 games, right, gets to say, "Hey friends, I'm going to go for the gold." And we have a big 4-way battle at the end. What this campaign is representing, to kind of make it a little more fun and flavorful, is there are small storm vaults all across the realm. And so you, with your army, are trying to conquer them at all. You have to pick your general in the beginning, your general and your allegiance. The rest of your army can change over the course of these battles, but you have to have the same general. Right? He's your character. And he has to conquer 6 storm vaults, meaning you have to win 6 games in your campaign. And at that point, he can say, "I'm going to go for this huge storm vault." And he has to challenge everyone else. So like I said, you can pick the narrative missions or the match play missions, whatever you want to do. And then when someone wins 6 games and they go for the grand storm vault, is the big 4-way battle. If they win this, then they are the winner of the campaign. So you have to win 6 games and then win the Uber mission. Not easy, because obviously if you're the first person to get 6 wins, the other 3 people are trying to destroy you first, right? And then they get to 6 wins, and then it becomes more of a free-for-all. It's a similar thing that we see in Path to Glory, whereas in that one you're accruing glory points. In this, it's just about wins. But the trade-off being, I like that they included a few more symmetrical match play missions in addition to the more narrative ones. Now, to add some more layer, like depth and stuff like that on top of that, during your first battle of a Storm Vault campaign, whether you are winning or losing, you get an artifact. The idea being is, even if you lose, you grab something on the way out. And you're all going to fight over these 6 artifacts. Okay? Now, these 6 artifacts are really interesting. They all have... They're all like getting an artifact of power. It goes on your general. And let's see, I don't know if it is your general. Carried by a hero from your army, and note down your campaign roster. You receive the awakened artifact in addition to any other artifacts of power your army can have, but otherwise this artifact follows all the normal rules for artifacts of power. So basically, you get this assigned to your army. You can assign it to any hero, but it has the same rules as artifacts, so they can't have, like, there's no way to get 2 of these things. But yeah, so in addition to any other artifacts your army can have, it doesn't necessarily mean that a character can have this and another artifact of power. Anyway, all that out of the way, it's very crunchy. They all have a condition. So we'll take, let's pick a fun one, because I already previewed this one. Let's go with the Ether Blast Pinion. This is the one that I think is super cool. After each battle, Ether Blast Pinion gains a level of power of if 3 or more charge moves and or run moves were made by the bearer. So if you run or charge a total of 3 times or more, you gain a level. Over the course of your 6 to 7 games, how many games you guys are playing in your campaign, every time you go up a level, you get additional effects. So you start at level 1, right? So just for saying, I'm going to grab the Ether Beast Pinion. Sorry, I said blast before. Beast Pinion. The bearer can run and still charge later in the same turn. So that's just a flat thing you have. You go up to the next level, meaning your hero who had it ran or charged 3 times in that game. Second level, add 3 inches to the move characteristic. Now they're running and charging and doing that 3 times a game. Third level, add 1 to charge rolls for friendly units wholly within 12 inches of the bearer at the start of your charge phase. 4 is the bearer can retreat and still charge later. So now you can run, retreat, charge, all that kind of stuff. And then the 5th level, when you go Super Saiyan with this thing, is add 6 inches to the bearer's move characteristic instead of 3. In addition, it can fly. So I love this. This is actually really, really cool. Instead of giving an army like an experience thing as they accrue stuff, you just pick your favorite hero and build your army around him and give him something cool. I really like that. As far as the missions go, so we have our battle plan ones first that are, again, very symmetrical for folks who like the more quote-unquote fair type stuff. Move these out of the way here. And then we move into the more narrative stuff where you have very attacker, defender, that kind of stuff, very out there battle plans. Again, you have to win 6 games, and then you can contest the Uber Storm Vault, which has 2 Penumbral engines suggested in it. What's interesting is that right now you would need to buy 2 sets of this thing to actually complete this, because maybe the Penumbral engine is going to be a separate piece of terrain. It is a piece of terrain, so that might be separate. But right now it just seems odd that this book dropped where you need to have 2 of these sets to be able to play the campaign that comes in one of them. It just kind of is what it is. And with this, there's a whole bunch of special rules and that kind of stuff. What's interesting is that it does say that it is a Triumph and Treachery mission. This is a Triumph and Treachery battle for up to 4 players. Use the Triumph and Treachery rules from the core book. Secret objectives are not used. So this is one where we can all gang up on one person and kind of hose each other. I think I don't like the fact that it makes you go to another rule book to get the rules for stuff. That being said, Triumph and Treachery really does help keep 4-player battles manageable. It really, really does, without just this huge bloodbath. And that is pretty much the book. It gives you this great little reminder. This is what endless spells are, so if you didn't grab Malign Sorcery, you have a updated rules book. It's like, here's how endless spells work as far as dispelling them and all kind of stuff. And then you have your points and a little campaign roster sheet so you can track the level of your weapon, your general, and that kind of stuff. What I will say, and then here's a bunch of tokens, like we said before. And so you have your grave sites for the Legions of Grief Allegiance ability. You have 4 grave sites. Interesting. You have 4 grave sites. And then a bunch of objective markers for you and your friends. Here's little tokens of the weapons, just with reminders about how you achieve their potential. So like the Ether Beast Pendant, 3 or more charges, that kind of stuff. So very interesting things. I think, well, first of all, these look top-notch. These are actually really great quality, which is really, really nice. So I want to have a brief discussion about the value of this set. So as I said before, I don't think this set is for everybody. If you haven't picked up on the theme of this book, it is extremely narratively focused. Like I said, almost 2/3 of the entire book is just the story of what's going on right now in the realms, and I'm going to be covering that in dedicated lore videos. And then almost 1/3 of it is just what's going on, well, almost a quarter, right? It's only 21 pages out of 88 that are dedicated to rules and things like that. The others are just kind of art. There are fewer models than there were in Malign Sorcery, so if you're just a model enthusiast, which many people are, absolutely, these models look fantastic. They are cool, but that needs to be played. How much are you buying this set for the model specifically? Or if you are someone who is really focused on the competitive aspect, obviously they posted the rules for the Penumbral Forge and the Malign Source, the actual endless spells themselves up online already. If you don't like either of those things, that will dramatically affect the reasons you have to buy this. Because if you think about it, if you remove those things, if you don't want to, or you don't like them, you don't like the models, you don't want to use them in match play, the only real thing that you get from this book is going to be the points for them, as well as the Mercenary rules, which I assume, because they've already said Mercenaries will be in General's Handbook, it'll just be reprinted somewhere else. What I'm trying to get at is this is not a must-buy. It is a very cool set. I love the models. I like the story. Actually, I was breezing through it quite a bit, just trying to get a sense of what it was truly about. And they do a cool job of having dialogue with Sigmar and Teclis and Tyrion and Lady Ollander, and she's being all BA, and the Celestin Prime does a lot more than we've seen him do in a long time. Like, there's really, really cool things here. But if you, again, are very focused on matched play, that does not attribute value to you. Now, of course, in addition to narrative, I was really, really excited for the campaign system. I was very curious about what they were going to do. What they did was something very, very simple. It's kind of even a step backward from Path to Glory, which I love Path to Glory. The fact that you have to win 6 games. You know, Path to Glory had this cool thing where you accrued points, and then when you achieved a certain point level, which you could, you know, arbitrarily change as you will, to kind of make the campaign longer or shorter. This one is just 6 games flat. Of course, if you and your gaming group agree, you can change that too. And then there's the big 4-way battle thing. Again, it doesn't necessarily stop runaway victories at all. There are some cool things. The weapon progression system is cool. It's more a matter of... I can see it being very dull for someone who doesn't have a great character. Meaning, like, these are all great weapons and artifacts. They were all terrific once they start getting leveled up. Some are better early game, some are better late game, you know, on the spectrum of how good they are per level. But honestly, like, if you're new to the hobby and you're starting off with just the most basic type of heroes, so like, you know, a White King, that guy's going to get toasted before he ever gets to using those things. So it is kind of dependent on creating a game space where those heroes that have the cool things can actually get to the battle to do the fun things. My point is that it's a really, really cool system that I enjoy and I think will be very, very cool for narrative things, but it has the potential to kind of fizzle for someone who is new to the hobby and doesn't have a wide, you know, collection of models to pull from. I think the best way I can describe this set, if I'm being totally honest with you, this thing is somewhere between Firestorm and Malign Sorcery. So Malign Sorcery was all about, I mean, there was some little narrative things in there that are pretty forgettable, but it introduced realm-specific artifacts, which was huge and game-changing for the competitive scene. It introduced endless spells, which Cogs and Umbral Spell Portal, that kind of stuff, like, are still very relevant in the gaming meta. So there was a lot of stuff to chew on for narrative folks, people who love the models, because there were so many models in that set. And then also the competitive scene just got flipped because there were just so many options. We could all just explore different realms and artifacts and that kind of stuff. And then on the other end of the spectrum is Firestorm, which was 100% narrative. I mean, you can technically take the allegiance abilities into matched play, but there wasn't a massive benefit. Most of those factions had better ones anyway. My point is that, like, that gave you a campaign system to really interact with other people and create custom armies that were super asymmetrical and create these really cool narrative games. And that is the spectrum, right? The competitive scene that really gets buffed by this release and the more narrative stuff for creating fun memories with your friends. What I would say is this kind of falls weirdly in the middle, and it has really good parts of both, but also kind of misses the mark on some of them as well. Like, I think Mercenaries is a really cool idea, like thematically. Like, I have thought about those kinds of things before. How come we can't actually have our Fire Slayers be true mercenaries and work for everyone? I love that they included that. And then for the missions they give you are really interesting. Very cool deployments for all of them, for the match play ones and also for the narrative ones. The fact that they include match play ones in the campaign kind of gives lean towards the more competitive people who want a more quote-unquote fair game. And the fact that there are pitched battle profiles for everything, including the terrain, the mercenary system, all that stuff. Like, it's all there ready to be used for matched play, but it's trying to kind of put it in a light narrative way, and I feel like it kind of doesn't do a great job at either. It's not the in-depth epic storytelling stuff that Firestorm could give you with, you know, very asymmetrical armies against each other, fighting across a huge map and that kind of stuff. Nor is it the sheer amount of crunchy rules that got dropped on the game when Malign Sorcery came out for us to really dig into and explore for the more competitive minded. Instead, we kind of end up in the middle where we have some things that are kind of in match play that will probably end up in the General's Handbook. We have a very light campaign system that is cool with the weapons, you know, evolving over the game span of the games, but it doesn't have that same flavor and depth as, say, Firestorm. So if you want my honest opinion about the value of this book, if you are unsure if you will get the most out of it, meaning you're not sure you want the endless spells, you're not sure your friends would do a campaign system, that kind of stuff, I would really recommend going to your local game night and saying, does anyone want to chip in a couple bucks and we'll buy this as a group. We'll have the endless spells available to all of us, and we'll do the campaign together. Because here's the thing, like, it's just not as essential as Malign Sorcery was, where there are things your army would be missing out on, truly missing out on, in terms of being able to play at a competitive level and understand the competitive scene like Malign Sorcery did. Nor does it give you this drastic, sweeping narrative campaign that Firestorm presented where you and your friends could go in on that. It's kind of, like I said, right in the middle. So I'll let you decide. Frankly, I'm very thankful that Games Workshop sent me an early copy, and I try to be as honest as I can in these reviews. You're going to hear a lot of people chatting about the effectiveness of the spells. I'm sure the YouTubers will just read the book to you, and you can decide for yourself from them. For me personally, this is something that I would have bought for myself to share with my friends at Rerolling Ones. But I think only one of the 4 or 5 of us would really need to buy this set, because, you know, we're friends. I'll loan them my endless spells and that kind of stuff. As far as every player needing it, kind of like the endless spell thing, I don't think it's quite that, you know, big of a change that every player should feel like they should get it. So you decide for yourself based on this. Like I said, I'll go down here to the cam. You know, this book, it's nice high quality. You got tokens for all your missions, for all the campaign stuff, and you got a bunch of really cool spells that may or may not come out separately, because it kind of looks like they have the potential to. So really just think about the purchases, look at the price point, and decide for yourself. Now, at the time of this recording, this is I recorded before pre-orders released, or before pre-orders went up, so I don't actually know the price that they're going to sell it at. There was a rumor, but I don't share rumors on my channel. So just think for yourself. The models are terrific, no question about there. This is GW at the top of their game. Campaign system is a little light, but very intriguing with the weapon system, the way weapons evolve, and a really cool story. So if that's enough for you, like it is for me, I hope you enjoy it. And so thank you so much, everyone, for watching my review of Forbidden Power. It is an exciting time, and you can look forward to a series of lore videos coming out about the siege of the Raven City here pretty soon. Thank you all so much for watching. Happy wargaming.